Okay, we'll start the meeting. Please stand for the. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Avery,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tiltonburn,
Aye.
Wendell.
Aye.
Okay, open forum. The first thing we're going to have is a proclamation that I have here. Mayoral Proclamation, City of Brookings, South Dakota. Whereas June is celebrated as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Pride Month across the United States. And whereas for almost 245 years, the Declaration of Independence has inspired Americans' ideals with the statement, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And whereas Pride Month celebrates everyone's right to live without fear of prejudice based on sexual orientation or gender identity. And whereas the LGBTQ plus community includes our neighbors, friends, and family members. And whereas the City of Brookings' vision is to become a welcoming and inclusive community where all can bring their dreams. And whereas the City of Brookings has received a perfect score of 100 on the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index, the largest LGBTQ plus civil rights organization in the United States for 3 years in a row. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Opke G. Niemeyer, Mayor of the City of Brookings, do hereby proclaim June 2021 as LGBTQ Pride Month. Okay, Anna's here tonight to give us a rundown on what SDSU's up to.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Anna Shane, the Government Affairs Chair for the Student Association at SDSU. This summer, and Student Association is very active even throughout the summer, so here I am. The Student Association exec team is really busy planning a lot of summer trainings, meeting with the university, planning fall engagement events, and getting everything in order for when the whole Senate meets in the fall. Additionally, since that was last year, the Student Promotion Fund application was submitted. And then a few university updates. The SDSU COVID-19 response team and the Jacks Are Back task force moved our safety level to blue, which is really exciting for students, classes, organizations, and events going into the fall. And we're really excited about what that means for us. And speaking of, new student orientations are in full swing, which means that fall really is coming, which I'm personally excited about. So this concludes my report, and thanks for your time. I'll stand by for any questions.
Any questions from anyone? Go ahead, Nick.
Well, thanks so much for joining summer sessions. You'd mentioned the new student orientation program. Do I understand correctly that those programs are exclusively online this summer?
Yeah.
So students and families aren't visiting Brookings or campus in person this summer?
That's correct. They're all virtual. I think they had to make the decision in like February when things were still pretty uncertain. So hopefully I'm thinking, and we've kind of talked about that, that should be one of the very last things that we have. That's all online. So that's exciting.
Thank you.
Okay. We have open forum now. Is there any member of the public who wish to address the council on an item not listed on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next thing. Item 6, we have no contracts or change orders tonight. Item 7, an ordinance, first reading. Introduction of item 7A, introduction and first reading of Ordinance 2021-022, an ordinance amending Section 94-222 of the zoning ordinance of the City of Brookings pertaining to the procedures for conditional use applications. Public hearing will be on July 13th. Mike Struck will give us a review of this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This ordinance is, and this one, the next item to follow too, both are in regards to a timing change of when applications will be due from both the conditional use process and for a rezoning. And it's really to help align more with our development review team, our internal kind of staff meetings to help us thoroughly vet projects before they move forward to the planning commission level and then ultimately. So the change is currently those items are due on the 15th of the month to get on the next month's planning commission agenda. And what we're proposing is we move that deadline up to the first day of the month for the following month's meeting. And there's an example that is shown here. The yellow is the current time frames associated with the 15th of the month, and the green would be if we moved it to the first of the month. It really allows us more from the staffing level, allows us a little bit more time to work through some of these issues and make sure that they're agenda ready prior to them moving forward. And we've ran into some issues where it's challenging to meet with our development review team and still get these items on the agenda. It really puts the staff in a difficult position coming out of a Thursday development review team meeting and trying to make all these changes and get them, the staff reports ready to be published, and sent out to the planning commission sometimes as early as the following Monday. And we've had some instances where we've had to amend the agendas after they've been distributed because discussions that occur in our development review team meetings has changed maybe some of the recommendations and such. So it's a change that we feel is a good change that will ultimately lead to a better product as it moves forward through that review process with our planning commission and ultimately to the city council. And I'd stand available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any questions from the public? Having none, is there any questions from council?
Thanks for the information. Makes good sense. And of course, if staff is sharing with us that this might, improve the time frame and make good sense for the development review team, that makes good sense to me. I noticed in the minutes of the planning commission that the two developers or members of the development community that sit on the commission voted no on this change. Can you give us some of the feedback they might have provided prior to the no vote?
Yeah, there were two developers that are on our planning commission that did vote opposed to this change. And the biggest thing is there are instances where items come up where they're unanticipated changes, and to seek a rezoning and somebody comes to them on the 14th of June, well, they would technically not be eligible with this change, so they'd have to submit it to get on the August planning commission meeting. And so they're waiting a month and a half to start the process. And so that is, some of the concern that came from the development community. Sometimes those things come up. Usually, they plan well enough in advance and they know that there are some, what they're planning to seek for their zoning or something like that. But there are some instances here and there where it's an unanticipated change that would be needed. And it could be something on the conditional use side where they have the zoning in place, but the use is this. And, they weren't anticipating that, but a client came to them and wanted to pursue a business opportunity in one of their spaces, and it just so happens to fall in the conditional use aspect. So that was their primary concern. They weren't as concerned about going through the development review team. It's just the potential that it could have a timing effect on them.
Thanks for the context.
Leah?
Related to that question, I just wondered if the timeline is going to be the significant objection to this change, what actions will staff take, assuming that this will pass, to maybe alert those heavy hitter developers, those who are most likely to come before that group with those types of things, proactive communication about that change in process? Is there anything planned for that?
Probably one of the most effective ways for us is to really reach out to their engineering firms that they work with locally, because that's where most of the projects originate, or if they have a proposal. They're working through their engineering firm, so we'll communicate with them. We can also send it out to the development community and try and reach out as best we can that way. We can also put notices, kind of hang them at our front counter area, just letting them know of these upcoming changes and things like that. Work with public or with Chelsea on some public information things through social media to try and help spread the word as well.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to item 7B, introduction and first reading on ordinance 21-023, an ordinance amending chapter 94-7B of the city of Brookings and pertaining to the procedure for a zoning change. Public hearing will be held on July 13th, 2021. Mike Struck will review this item also.
This is, we just finished, only this would be on a rezoning or a zoning amendment.
Okay.
And so it's same time frames, moving to the first day of the month for the following month's deadline to get on to the planning commission. So if there's any questions, I think we pretty much addressed it through the conditional use discussion, the exact same changes. And we worked with the city attorney. Actually, Steve drafted the language for us, so.
Okay. Any questions? Corey, let's move on. Item 8A, second reading and action on ordinance 21-019, an ordinance establishing a schedule for introduction and adoption of the annual municipal budget ordinance of the city of Brookings in South Dakota. Jake, our city manager, our assistant city manager, will review this for us.
It sounded like. The passage of Senate Bill 138 allows for the introduction of the annual budget ordinance as late as the first regular city council meeting in November. Previous law required that the first reading of the budget ordinance would be held within the month of September. Moving the introduction of the budget ordinance to later in the year will allow for better understanding and projecting of revenues and expenditures, which ultimately allows for more accurate budgeting. In order to take advantage of the delayed timeline, the city is required to pass a budget schedule ordinance, which would be accomplished by ordinance 21-019, which is before you tonight. With that in mind, staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay.
So moved.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there any questions or comments from the council? I have one, Jake. Is this something that we're going to do just this year because of our delays that we've had with the state and the financing and COVID-19, obviously?
Yep. This is something I would say that would be desirable to do on a year-by-year basis, just because we're very sales tax dependent as a community. So the more time that we have to see more months of sales tax, it allows us as staff to bring better recommendations to city council on setting those revenue projections as well as expenditures that ultimately impact not only our operations as a city, but those outside agencies and such that are funded as well. So this is a change that would likely occur year over year. Steve, I would ask you, with the ordinance that's written, would we have to pass this ordinance annually, or is this written in such a way that would make the change permanent?
No, it would continue into perpetuity till it's revised, if ever.
Okay. Seeing no other comments or questions, call the question. City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tilton Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Avery.
Aye.
Okay. Item 8B, public hearing and action on ordinance 21-020, a temporary ordinance establishing procedures pertaining to licensing medical cannabis establishments in the city of Brookings. Mike Struck will give us a review of this item.
Members and members of the public, this is a temporary ordinance that is primarily being acted on to buy time. As we're all aware with how the cannabis laws have been passed, they were set to be implemented July 1st. And so the Department of Health actually has until October 29th of 2021 to determine the rules and regulations on the licensing side of things. But this temporary ordinance provides the opportunity for the city to deny an application for a cannabis establishment. And partly it's because we don't know what rules and regulations we need to abide by on the licensing side yet. In the meantime, we have been working with other communities around the state and across the nation that have experienced this similar type of action and are close to having some zoning ordinances in place to bring forward to the Planning Commission starting potentially in July, and that they would eventually get to the City Council. They're still working on the licensing aspect of it, and I know the city attorney has been heavily involved in the review of both the zoning and the licensing elements of it. So this does come to you with a unanimous recommendation from the Planning Commission, and staff would stand for any questions you may have.
Open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to have a question or comments or anything? Seeing none, or close the public hearing, I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any council questions or discussion? Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happens after we receive direction from the Department of Health? Like, how quickly then is it an expectation that we do start accepting these applications and making decisions on them? I didn't see a date in the materials other than that October 29th date, but if rules came from Department of Health earlier than that, what does that trigger for us?
It has prompted us to work to get our licensing in pretty good shape. So things are coming together. Yvonne Taylor is sitting on a committee with the Department of Health, which is developing those rules, or at least providing a status report of the Department of Health's efforts to develop those rules. So I think that we will know when those rules are coming down. And so in the meantime, we need to keep working on our licensing ordinance. I think that the areas where the Department of Health will provide the necessary regulations, those will probably be more statewide or state level requirements, and in order to allow for the implementation of the medical cannabis program statewide. And so I think pretty close to being completed even before we see those regulations. But on the other hand, we can't issue a license until we know what those actual Department of Health regulations are. We assume that they'll dovetail with what we expect them to be as we're developing this licensing ordinance. So we've kind of been doing two things at once. Mike has worked with us to develop this temporary ordinance, and in the meantime, we've put many hours in on the licensing ordinance itself, and it's getting fairly close to circulation at this point.
And Yvonne Taylor, who you referenced, is from the Municipal League, correct? So a lot of the information we're getting on the state's processes as a city is coming through the Municipal League?
That's correct. We do have a conference call with city attorneys and Yvonne Taylor and the Department of Health, I believe this Thursday afternoon. And so I think then we'll kind of know the status as of now with respect to how much more work the Department of Health has to do to develop its regulations. I assume they're doing just like we are, which is working hard, but perhaps they're not ready to issue anything publicly at this point. But we'll get a status report, and we'll be able to provide that to the council and the public later this week, I believe.
I would just add to that Steve and Mike and the rest of the staff have been working very diligently on this project. I know Mike is hoping to get the zoning to the next July, or the July's Planning Commission, so it could be before you as soon as the end of July, early August. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great to see, but I know these guys have been putting a lot of time into the zoning as well as the licensing. Steve, does the licensing have to go to Planning Commission, or does that go directly to City Council?
That'd be a city council matter.
Okay.
And what this ordinance really does is it buys us more time because it is kind of two separate issues. The licensing is the part that Steve's been working on, and it kind of syncs more with the Department of Health regulations. The zoning side is really up to the local control and to identify where the appropriate areas within the community would be for these types of establishments. And so that's what we've been working on simultaneously as well. And And like we mentioned, we hope to bring it to the Planning Commission in July for their consideration. And then once the Planning Commission provides their recommendation, it'll come before you.
Any other questions?
Do we know will cities have the right of licenses?
We would. Under the initiated measure, cities would have the prerogative to restrict the numbers. We cannot foreclose the opportunity to have a dispensary or make it impractical to be able to be licensed, but we can determine the number that we would recommend for licensing.
And there's no framework at this time of based on population or anything. That's just all still up
Yeah,
for discussion.
Right. The initiated measure really doesn't give guidance as to how a city determines the number that would be appropriate. And I'm speaking to dispensaries, not the other types
Right.
of establishments. So there's really no specific guidance as to how that determination would be made. We do know Yankton, for example, I think has adopted their initial licensing ordinance with 2 for that community identified as dispensaries permitted. Now that's subject to change because, you know, they recognize that they may be out front in terms of getting a licensing ordinance prepared, but basically they designated 2 for the city of Yankton.
You know, and I think in Minnesota they restricted it just to a very small number in the whole state, haven't they, for medical?
And there really is no guidance other than one statute that would limit us to, and it does make sense. You know, we can't restrict it so that we don't have any. And so, but other than that, we can determine what's the appropriate number for this community.
Sure.
Steve, I know you were doing some checking and consulting with communities in Colorado. Do you have any of them used population, you know, as a X number of facilities per?
I don't have a survey of their methodology on that point. I can obtain that, but I'm not seeing that in the ordinances I'm looking at in terms of how they determine the number. That is a good question, and I think we should compare what they've done there. I just didn't see it in the ordinances that I looked at. However, we do have, you know, a cannabis consultant, which might be able to help us with that.
Thank you.
Comments? All right. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Brink,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Tiltonburn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Avery,
Aye.
Bacon.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 8C, public hearing and action on temporary alcohol application from the Brookings Area Chamber Downtown Committee to host a series of events for downtown at Sundown on the 300 block of 5th Street and the 400 block of Main Avenue on July 22, July 29, August 5th, August 12th, and August 19th. And Bonnie, you will present this item to us?
Mayor, council members, and members of the public, the Brookings Chamber has submitted a temporary alcohol application for the downtown at Sundown. There's 5 dates in which the mayor just presented to you, which would incorporate the downtown area for this event. There's food vendors and alcohol vendors and, of course, things in an area for the children. Ashley Bigger is here this night. If you have any questions for her about the event or alcohol at this event.
Okay, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there any individuals here that would like to ask questions or have comments? Ashley, you want anything to say about this? I figured you would.
Good evening. I'm so excited to be presenting or apply for this application this year. It was such an unfortunate thing to have to cancel last year, but we made the decision in the best interest of our community. So I want to also say a huge thank you to Jake and Bonnie and Jeremy Lindstead and all the staff that really has helped pull together all the parts and components that goes into a huge event like this. So really appreciate their time and everything with that. So As Bonnie said, this is a new space. So in prior years, we were all on the Fifth Street location. You'll notice that we've kind of smudged up a little bit there. So breaks away some of the pain points for some of the business owners that were along that. You'll notice that Brookings Furniture Company is actually in there, so it's kind of nice to have that access back there as well. So this space actually doubles our size by doing this, and the stage will actually be located in that intersection. So a little bit different this year too, the time. So we used to have 5 to 9 with a headliner starting at 5. We noticed through doing time tracking that not so many people showed up in that first hour. So we're going to open it up still at 5:30 with a headliner taking the stage at 6. So want people to still come down and get comfortable, but just don't need to do that if we don't need to do it. So there's 5 weeks instead of 7. So we're really condensing the event to maximize that we have developed. So we're really excited about that. We got rid of drink and food tickets. So just allow ease of access to people to go up to each individual vendor and just pay for cash. It's just a lot easier than, oh, I have one drink ticket left, or, oh, I didn't get drink tickets and now I just stood in that line. So we're just really trying to ease everything up. We won't be having any face painting this year. Just not quite sure how to do that yet, so we're just not going to do it. But we will still have some bouncy houses, and we're actually looking at increasing those to allow for more, because we're seeing more and more people attend our event. So we started off the series with about 500 people per event back in 2015, and now we're about over 1,000 each one. So we're looking forward to hopefully seeing 10,000 people throughout those 5 days downtown this summer. So I'll stand for any questions that you might have.
Okay, let's close the public hearing and,
So moved.
okay, moved and seconded. I see that Leah has the first question.
I just wanted to know, Ashley, the food and drink tickets, which is a great change. I assume that the vendors now are just responsible for carding for alcohol sales, just like they would in their establishments.
Yeah, so we're actually doing it a twofold system, because regardless of the fact that we were carding or wristbanding, actually the responsibility falls on the party handing the drink to the individual. So regardless of that cash or that ID exchange, it always hands the handover part of it. So we'll be wristbanding as well as each individual vendor. Again, just trying to really make this experience for the guest as easy as possible. And I will add too, we are employing a uniformed officer at each event. So that's to also heighten our security level and help out with things like that as well.
Thank you. Perfect.
Any other questions? Get bands all booked up?
Oh, you know it. They're all on our Facebook
So
page.
can you name a few of the bands and what their forte is?
Oh, so the Barnflies, I don't know if you know who those are, but so that's really awesome. We have Rewinder from Sioux Falls. They have a cassette era mix, so lots of fun music there. We have a country act, just a lot of different acts. So downtown@sundown.org is the website. You can go check out all of the bios and everything.
Okay, and then the other question I have is size of this, all the businesses pretty much on board that are on Main Street?
Yeah, so prior to actually going for the street closure, we gave them about a month in advance to really take time to look at what our proposal was, to allow for any feedback or questions they might have. Then we went through the whole downtown area itself. So we do have a list on our we call it Chamber Master, that we keep everything in. And so I did send out 270-ish emails. I'm not sure if everybody read them, but talking about what was going on downtown to the entire downtown space, as well as within a private Facebook group for downtown too. So tons of communication, and they all have my phone number, so they can find me.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Will the city clerk?
Meyer,
Aye.
Tiltonburn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Avery,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Frank.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 9, other business. Item 9A, action on a revised preliminary plat for lots 1-29, Block 1, lots 1-2, Block 2, lots 1-22, Block 3, lots 1-13, Block 4, lots 1-12, Block 5, lots 1-11, Block 6, all in River Run Addition. Mike Struck will finish this.
You did. So this is a revised preliminary plat for the River Run addition. This was something that was approved earlier this year. You can look at the overhead screen there. You can see the areas outlined in red. This is the original preliminary plat that was approved. And so The red areas are the areas that are under consideration. If you could flip to the next one, the yellow, this is the revised preliminary plat. That same area in red is highlighted here in yellow. And if you can tell me the difference in the two, Paul will buy you a coffee. But essentially what the difference is it's a net increase of 3 total lots. And our ordinance requires that anytime there's an increase in the number of lots, it requires a revised preliminary plan. And so they're going through the process. This is a residential subdivision where approximately half of the lots are for Habitat for Humanity. They're trying something that's a little bit different for them locally, but they're going with the single-family attached 0-foot side yard. So you have the common wall, and that's what they're trying to do in these areas. And they were able to accomplish 3 more lots to provide 3 more homes to hopefully a family. I would stand for any questions that you may have. And this does from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay,
So moved.
Second.
motion is seconded. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there any council discussion or questions? Patty?
Thank you and the Planning Commission for working so hard on this and, you know, looking at higher density and, you know, how we can achieve that. So I'm excited to see this whole development come to fruition.
Thank you.
Mike, these are twin homes. What is the distance between the twin homes on the lots? I mean, what is the actual distance? I mean, obviously it's the same as the homes also, but how much space is there in between these buildings?
So I believe the side yard setback is either 6 or 7 feet. So what you're seeing there is actually, it's hard to tell. So if we look at the top box, there's 10 lots listed there, but the way the engineer showed those is they're actually showing the lot split down the common wall of the twin home. So when we
Right.
talk 0-foot side yard, so it's basically one large structure with it's subdivided down the middle of the 2 units, and that wall is fire rated and it's got a footing underneath. And so typically what they'll do is they'll come out and survey it once they get the foundation, because that is then where the lot line is set. And so they
the
share
question I'm
one,
asking, Mike, is the space in between 2 of the twin homes.
right? That's typically about a total of anywhere from 12 to 14 feet.
Okay.
So each one would have like a 6 or 7 foot side yard. So a total of 12 to 14 feet in between the
So
units.
there's going to be a surmountable amount of gap in between, which looks good, and
Yes.
and people will be able to drive behind their building if they have to, if they have to move something in, possibly.
Possibly. It depends on what they end up doing for basements. If they
Okay.
have any egress windows, probably wouldn't want to drive. To bring things into the backyard, there'll be plenty of room for the fire department to get between structures if needed. As far as vehicles, I mean, possibly, but
So I could see somebody trying to store their boat in the backyard or something sometime.
that may not happen in this particular area because they'd have to probably get property lines.
And there might be a tree in between too. So,
Correct.
all right. Any other questions or call the roll?
Tilton Burn,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Avery,
Aye.
Bacon,
Aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Niemeyer.
Aye. So, item 10, progress report. Jake Meshi, our Assistant City Manager, will present this item.
Good evening again. This is the June 2021 progress report. As usual, our kickoff slide is the 20th Street intersection. That's our last update. Still, those negotiations are continuing with landowners for right-of-way and easements. We have seen some movement on our mobile home relocations, and some tenants have already moved out, so we're seeing some movement on that front. By and large, we're still on track to bid the project this fall of 2021, and then plan on construction for 2022 to 2023. And I guess one of the things I always skip over on this is I do encourage everyone to continue to check out that 20thstreetinterchange.com website. that is up and available and holds a lot of information on the history of this project, kind of how we got to this point, as well as those next steps. Jefferson Avenue Drainage Project, Phase 1 is underway. Again, both phases will be completed yet this year. So at this point, the water main has been installed. They're currently installing the storm sewer, and we'll move into the curb, gutter, and paving next. As a reminder, the entire project scope here is water main, storm sewer, curb and gutter, ramps, and then a storm sump pump collection pilot project. This project, both phases will be completed in October of this year. A Street and Maderi traffic signal. Right now they're working on Phase 1, which is that northern phase. They are installing the storm sewer, and they will move on to the sidewalk next. Phase 2 will follow. Both phases of this project will be completed this year, around September of 2021. The scope on this project, again, is traffic signals with video detection, curb, sidewalk ramps, and turn lanes. The storm sewer is included, as it did need to be slightly relocated. The benefit there is that pipe will get us another 50 to 75 years on that infrastructure. Fifth Avenue project, crews were working between 3rd and 5th Streets, installing new sidewalk and ramps. The new 8-foot shared use path will be on the east side of the road, and the asphalt overlay will follow. This will complete in August of 2021, with the primary goal there of being done before school starts. There was a slight impact there to the pool and getting to the parking lots, but we've seen great use of our pool that was closed in 2020, so we're very happy to have that open this year. We opened up this year on May 31st, and we've seen memberships generally up across the board in terms of families, a little bit down in individuals, but seeing, a little down in individuals then, but seeing some of those additional family members added on. So far, been great use of the pool, and we'll continue to have that open through the remainder of the summer. Encourage folks to stop by, get the day passes, get their memberships, and enjoy this amenity that we did not have available to us last year. On the week of June 17th, we recognized our waste and recycling workers. We wanted to celebrate them as they play a very pivotal role in keeping our community safe, clean, and beautiful. These are some of our unsung heroes that we often take for granted, but they do provide a very critical service to our community, so wanted to take the time to appreciate them for all of their hard work that they provide. We also had our pod members honored at the Brookings County Commission meeting. Resolution and certificates of appreciation handed out. There was folks represented from a number of different agencies to include the City of Brookings, Brookings County, the Brookings Health System, Avera Medical Group, and Sanford Health. All in all, we administered about 14,000 doses through the pod and fully vaccinated about 7,000 individuals. So we're putting a little bit of a spin onto a favorite event here in town. Most are used to the paint exchange that would be held every year. With DJ Boothie, our new Public Works Director, coming on board, he had a great idea to try to expand this event, similar to what you may see down in Sioux Falls. So instead of just a paint exchange, it's going to be a full household hazardous waste event. It will be held on August 21st from 8 a.m. to noon. It will be held in the Swiftel Center parking lot. They will ask that a donation be made for the group there, so if you can bring a non-perishable food item to participate, and there are a number of items that will be accepted that fall into those general categories. Those items will be available on our website to give everyone a full rundown of what they can bring, and then there are still a few items that you can't, but there'll be much more than paint involved this year. Police had a number of accomplishments since our last progress report. They had 2 officers who graduated from the South Dakota Police Academy. Ben specifically was recognized with a Blue Courage Award for demonstrating leadership qualities throughout the academy, so very proud of both Ben and Gabe on completing the academy. Officer Anderson received the Police Department's Employee of the Year Award, and then the Police Department did have an opportunity to engage in a number of outreach events, including Safety Town, which is ongoing, continues to be very popular. I had asked Chief Erickson if there was any room left. He said absolutely not. It fills up almost as soon as it's announced, so if anyone's interested in Safety Town, look for it next year early. They also did have a couple of panelists who participated on a number of events in the community, to include the Clear Mental Health Forum, as well as the library's inclusive spaces with the LGBTQ community. Couple events hosted out at the Swiftel Center. They did engage in a hazmat training, provided a site there, which involved Brookings County, city, as well as state and national organizations. And they held the bow fishing championship, where they had 152 teams, over 160 or over 600 people attend, and that was a great event there. With that, I would stand for any questions on any of the items in the progress report.
I have 2 questions on the hazardous waste event that we'll be having. Did you mention that in order to bring something, somebody needs to bring a non-perishable food item?
Yep, they do ask for a non-perishable food item to participate, so that is then donated to an organization.
Okay. What if we have individuals who would like to bring items but maybe don't have the means to donate an item?
We would ask that they would do that. We can certainly look further into that, about the means of it. But again, we're talking something very small. I mean, even a box of macaroni and cheese, a can of soup, something of that item would be what they're looking for. But understanding that they may not have the opportunity, we can certainly explore that further.
I'm sure if necessary, we would waive that. At the end of the day, the solid waste fund is paying for this event. It does cost, Jake, do you remember what the overall cost thing was?
Yeah, probably $30,000 to $50,000 is the rough estimate at this point.
So the solid waste fund is paying for it, but I would encourage everyone to participate in this. And a lot of people don't think about this, but you have we call it household hazardous waste, but it's common things in our garage, in our houses, anything from paint to light bulbs, to fertilizer. But a lot of times, this is hazardous to our pets, to our children, but also when firefighters enter households, it's more detrimental to them when they're exposed to flames. So it's important all around that we get it out of our homes, but also for the environment as well. So I'm sure we'd work with individuals through that process.
Yeah, I would just hate to eliminate any of the families that will benefit from the contributions to, from participating in the event. My second question on it, and this might be kind of a curveball question, but would we potentially be able to accept at this event, either this year, at future years, or maybe at a different event, medications that people have no longer have use for? I know that sometimes there is the need to kind of get rid of some of those items. Would those be accepted here, or would that be a different event altogether?
So I don't know if Chief is here, but I believe Brookings County has a drop box at the courthouse, is it, that's available all year round for anyone that wants to drop off medications and such?
Yes, they do have a drop box inside the entryway to the sheriff's office, actually. So that's there 24/7. You can drop things off there.
And any medication can be
Yep.
dropped there?
Any
Perfect. Thank you.
medications. Yep.
I had just one question. What happens to all that material then, or how is it disposed of ultimately then?
Yeah, so they partner with an organization, I believe it's Veolia, who actually puts on that event, and then they're licensed to dispose of that properly. So depending on the item, there's different protocols and procedures, but that is part of the cost that we had discussed. It's working with that private firm who has the expertise to make sure that those items are safely disposed.
Okay.
There's actually multiple ways, and I'll just add to it because I know Habitat for Humanity, the Restore, is working with us on that. So if there's products that they could take, they could sure utilize it. I know with paint, a lot of times they mix it together. You get a real pretty government grade color that could be utilized again. But other items might be incinerated as well. But Jake's exactly right. Viola is a known contractor that can dispose of these products.
Holly?
I'm sorry, one more follow-up question. Is there somewhere that the public can go to see what materials they can bring? I'm assuming there's maybe some things like, would they be able to bring batteries? And like you said, Paul, light bulbs, that wouldn't have been something that immediately came to my mind. Is there somewhere?
Yeah, so as staff, we're currently working to get that all up on our website to show exactly what is all eligible to be brought, and then the few items that that shouldn't be brought. So we'll be getting that on our website shortly.
Okay, any other questions? At this time, is there a city council member that would like to introduce a topic or for future discussion? Leah?
I'd just like to ask if it's appropriate now and he's willing, give us an update on, I'm sure some members of the community are interested to know the fate of the marketplace agreement on that DOT land. And so I'd like to ask you to provide that update.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It's been kind of a long process since we began that. Just a few years ago, the City Council did extend that agreement. The agreement does expire July 1 of this year, so just in a few short weeks, it'll expire. The developers have informed us that they do not request a renewal of that agreement. They cited that with the current retail environment, they wouldn't anticipate moving forward with that. Therefore, staff will hopefully bring back this fall some options for council to move forward with that site. So more to come on that one.
Okay. Let's review next meeting's agenda so far that we have. Just so you know, Patty Bacon and Nick Wendell will have birthdays between then and now. I'm not going to put the birth date down because I see it. So, but I'm not going to mention it. We're going to have first readings on false security alarms. Dave from the police department is going to explain those, and then we'll have an ordinance first reading to dissolving the Board of Health. Contracts and change orders. We've got a bid to look at for 15th and 7th Avenue. bid award, correct? And then second, reading and public hearings, conditional use application that we talked about tonight, the zoning change. There's an application for another video lottery possibility. Application for a new on-off sale wine and malt liquor license. Public hearing and action transfer an on-sale license for the Swift Health Center to the new management services. Other business, resolution for necessity for I-29. Check with DJ, possible for RS? What is that? Okay, all right. And then E911 agreement amendment. Dave from the police department will explain that to us. Any questions from anyone on those? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.